Thomas Green here with Ethical Marketing Service. On the episode today, we have Niki Saks. Niki, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Very much my pleasure. Would you like to take a moment and tell the audience a bit about yourself and what you do?
Sure. I am a wellness coach. So I help people with fitness and nutrition. And I help people with not just that, but kind of coaching them through what they are experiencing or what is holding them back in order, to be healthy. Um, and what I found during the course of my work was that a lot of people were coming to me with problems that were related more to mental issues than their actual health or fitness goals. So my journey is about, there was a lot of synergy and there was a lot of resonance to the issues that I was picking up with people, and I too have had a path of mental illness. So I decided to explore that and try and help people through my journey, and put the message out there.
Well, thank you for the introduction. I know we talked about the fact that you've got a book out. Do you have a copy, just to show the viewers what it looks like?
I Yeah, I unfortunately I don't. I have got rid of my stock, but it is available on Amazon.
There you go. That is the best answer. They're all sold out, I'm afraid, so I don't have one. But because the book is about your story. That's where I was going to go, as we talked about. So, in terms of what's relevant to the conversation, where does your story begin?
My story begins where in 2018, after a very complicated, mental illness journey, I was diagnosed with a condition, a disorder called borderline personality disorder. Borderline personality disorder is obviously a psychological, it's a cluster B personality disorder. And that's in my book. That is where my journey really started, because everything that I had been through in my life got to that point where I finally understood what was happening to me and what the symptoms or characteristics of the condition were. So it really did kind of make an impact. So my story starts with that. The name of the book is Hiding in the Open, Living Sensitively. And what that was about was my whole life, I was hiding from what the reality of my situation was. I wanted to be a perfect mother. I was a model. I wanted to do business well. I was putting so much pressure on myself to be perfect that I was hiding in the open. So my book talks about all the different conditions of sensitivity that I have been diagnosed with, and then it goes into my life story. What was the start of the condition for me, and goes right through my life up until today.
Thank you for that. For I'm got lots of questions, but for those people who
Okay.
are unaware, borderline personality disorder, how would you describe it to someone who perhaps doesn't is not informed about what it means and what it is?
That's a good question. And there are 9 characteristics or traits that can really define borderline personality. But fundamentally, it is all based on a desperate fear of abandonment, whether imagined or real. It is also, unstable relationships. When one suffers, they have a very unwavering sense of self. So they don't really know who they are, where they fit into. Massive impulsivity behavior, which can be, can lead to alcohol, drugs, eating disorders, self-harm and suicidal thoughts. And just generally, anger outbursts, just undefined behavior that can happen for just kind of on the moment. It can just change. So borderline personality affects about 1.6 people in the population, and a lot of the time goes undiagnosed.
So would you say, because taking a small example of what you said,
Sure.
for example, violent behavior, if you were consistently exhibiting violent behaviors, it wouldn't be BPD because it's not consistent. It's sort of like inconsistent behaviors, and it might take any form, if you like. Is that a fair summary?
Yeah, I think to an extent, it is inconsistent. So from one moment to the other, the one thing that borderline people are not is is violent, but we do have serious, like anger and emotional unstable emotions. Yeah, so it is, I think you're kind of right. Yeah.
Okay, so maybe not that specific example, but that principle.
Yes, absolutely,
And
absolutely
what's
right.
it like to experience that from your perspective? Not necessarily the outward definitional stuff, but your experience. What is that? What's that like?
Well, interestingly, my day could start really well. This is previously, that's what the book is about recovery. My day could start well, and then I could send a message to somebody and not get a response back immediately. And then what happens is I go into this spiral of rejection. And this is kind of a very broad example, but I go into a spiral of feeling rejected or thinking that there's something wrong with me. And then, as I could go out and something could happen and I have an emotional outburst. So the behavioral patterns are very erratic, and very sometimes unmanageable. And it's emotion. It's all based on emotion. It's all based on how we perceive the world and how we respond to it.
I'm interested to know also because you've done a lot of self work around this. Is there?
Mm.
Do you feel like there is a cause as to why you got diagnosed with BPD?
Absolutely. I think that with any mental illness, it starts with trauma in childhood. And I came from a very dysfunctional home where there was violence, there was abuse, there was alcohol, it was very dysfunctional. Um, so yeah, I think that's the cause fundamentally. And with mental illness, there's three components to it. There can be a predisposition to mental illness. Your circumstances or your environment can dictate how things turn out. So with BPD, it does usually start with abuse of some sort, and trauma, of which there's usually in a family, and the family of origin. There's usually a lot of that happens.
Your story started at 2018 in relation to this.
Mhm.
When do you actually? That was your diagnosis, is that correct? That
That's
date?
correct. Yeah.
And what happens next for you?
I got to a point where everything in my life at the time just seemed to be a mess. I'd come out of another dysfunctional relationship. I was suicidal. I thought that there was absolutely no hope for me. And when I was diagnosed, my team suggested that I start a process called dialectical behavioral therapy, which is not cognitive behavioral therapy. Dialectical is more a core mindfulness process with emotional regulation, interpersonal relationship building, and really just a mindfulness practice on how to cope with things better, avoiding triggers, identifying things, being able to label how you're feeling and be okay with it. So it was a journey. The counselor said to me at the time that if he could promise that within a year of doing this, I would be living a life worth living, would I go ahead? And I had absolutely nothing to lose. So I dived straight in. I dived in for a year. I did DBT every week, did a lot of work on that. And I just find even today, what it has done for me is, it just makes me show up differently in the world, and it makes me manage my relationships and life a whole lot better. But it is constant work. With borderline, you can't ever change the fact that you're borderline. Understanding that you are is and accepting that you are, which is one thing in dialectical behavioral therapy they teach you, is radical acceptance. And that is understanding that you may not be happy or like what is going on, but it is happening, so you can't change it. So yeah, I just set about doing that and working very, very hard in it. I also have a process of which I worked a lot with my clients in coaching, which is a value system. So it's learning to understand who you are and what you stand for. Um, and then also just in my book, I talk about how I manage on a daily basis. There's certain things that I need to do in order to make sure that I'm okay. For instance, I need to ensure I get 7 hours sleep a night, that I eat healthy, that I have movement, that I get into nature, that I connect with people that are meaningful for me and don't expect anything from me in particular, but just support me in what my endeavors are, or support me in life. So it is a multifaceted recovery story, but it does take a lot of work. So you can't ever change the fact that you have borderline personality, but you can arrest the traits of it so that your life can become more manageable.
So just a quick recap of the things that you said, because I
Mm,
think it sounded like that would be beneficial regardless of whether you had BPD or not, which was get into
absolutely.
nature, a regular amount of sleep, and
Mhm.
perhaps your community. Would you phrase it that way?
Yes, I think that I'd go through a detox process, which I talk about in the book, and it is about understanding who's in your life that and in your community that you want that lifts you up. I had to quote Brene Brown. She calls them candle outputters. You don't want to be around people that try and take your sparkle or your flame. You want to think of people that actually light your fire. So it was an interesting process for me as well to look at people in depth in my life and look at who I actually needed to be around. Um, because as a broken wing, I found that I was bringing in people that were like me, and it isn't good for me emotionally. So yeah,
So did you
absolutely.
end up perhaps ending some relationships as a result of that principle?
Absolutely. And it's difficult. It was very difficult for me, but my value system and what I needed to do was more important to me in order to live and to be healthy. One of the other traits of borderline is self harm and suicidal thoughts. So the relationship with people is the most important part of keeping stable. So I had to say goodbye to a few people, which was hard. Yeah, it was hard but necessary.
Well, thank you for sharing that. And you mentioned previously and in your last answer about suicidal thoughts. I
Mhm.
find that for the benefit of other people, perhaps because you never know who's listening. If they're in the
Sure.
experience or they're having the experience of, those thoughts, what advice would you give them as someone who's perhaps gone through that?
There are amazing organizations that are there to support people. And in fact, like Lifeline, for instance, I know there are various ones throughout the world. And the reason I'm saying that is it's an immediate solution to those feelings. With suicide, it is usually a momentary, if it's not a premeditated thing, it's usually a momentary um, thing that happens where you just flip or you just decide that it's not, life's not working. So to be able to reach out to somebody that can talk you off the ledge, and I say that because I, on 2 or 3 occasions in my life, have reached out to Lifeline, and they were there to support me right through it. This is if you're in the moment and you don't know where to turn. It could just be that person at the end of the line that can make a difference to you. They could say something, you can be heard, and I think that's important.
I would imagine, I don't know why this comes to me, but I'd imagine that's also really rewarding work. Um, it kind of sounds like something that would be quite a good thing to do as I don't know, I'm just thinking of like jobs, like on a daily basis, what you
Absolutely.
could do.
Absolutely. I'm actually starting a crisis supporter course with Lifeline. So yeah, I think that, you spoke about the practice of DBT, to benefit people. I think if anybody got into a situation or got into work or an environment where they're helping others, it certainly does take the focus off oneself. So yeah, it's I think a very good environment to be in, and yeah, to help other people.
So just come back to your story, and thank you for your answer, by the way. I think it was a great one. In
Okay.
2018, you got your diagnosis, and then you went through the not cognitive behavioral therapy, but the other one, which I can't remember what it's called
Dialect
now. And it
Dialecto.
was
Yeah.
it involved some mindfulness as well,
Mhm.
and you also decided to perhaps look at your peer group, get into nature, and have regular sleep. In terms
Yeah.
of big moments for you, or what happens next, where in your story are we?
So I moved countries, which was
Why did you do that?
well, for the love of my life, which
Okay.
is in my book. Yeah, it took me a long time to find this person, but it was also a new start for me, to let go of the past and that sort of thing. So here, I want to spend time working with people that might need assistance in life, or just counseling. I'm studying dialectal behavioral therapy as well. So I will be able to be a facilitator to people that need, that kind of support. Mindfulness sounds like something that's easy, or that is, and mindfulness is gentle, but it is a very powerful tool in being able to control your emotions and in the moment. And for it really does kind of help one take control of their life. So I hope to do more of that. There may be another book, which I'm hoping will happen too. But yeah, I'm spending my time here, finding my feet, starting a new life, starting a new process, helping people. I've had so many people from around the world reach out to me, which is amazing. My details are obviously on my website and that, but so I really want to spend this part of my world and my life, in my new chapter, spending it with, supporting people as much as possible.
Well, that's a nice segue because you referenced the new chapter, and that just makes me think about the book. So, at what point do you start writing?
Sorry, what point did I start writing?
Yeah. So, how far along do you think I can put this into a book and it will help someone else?
I wanted to write a book for a long time. I'm a writer, and I wanted to write a book. And I think everybody has a book in them. But when I was diagnosed with this condition, having been told that I had bipolar, ADHD, depression, and had been hospitalized for these things, I had an eating disorder. Having had all of that, I thought if I had to put it together into a readable story, people might be able to resonate with any one situation, or any one condition, and understanding that my journey is not better or worse than anybody else's. It's my journey, and it's how I got to the point where I felt that my life was a whole bunch of psychological disasters all bundled into one. And I thought that, if I could just help one person or whatever by telling and being completely honest and frank about my story and the various conditions that I was diagnosed with previously, I think that I believe that it could help. So I had the title of the book years ago, and I knew that it was just a time that it would come to the fore, where I would know exactly what it is was that I wanted to write about to help people.
And was it quite therapeutic to write, or was there some, I don't know, trauma revisited there? What was that experience like?
That's a great question, because a lot of people ask, and it was very therapeutic for me. It obviously, writing your story implicates everybody in your world as well. So my family, they were a bit surprised by what I put on paper. Um, in the book, I don't use any names, but obviously people know. So it was very therapeutic. it also, what it did was it started conversations with people in my life, my children, who the book is dedicated to. It started conversations that I needed to have a long time ago. So a lot came up. My mum, who unfortunately passed away a couple of months ago, realized things before she passed that she didn't know before. And there's no better way to communicate than on paper, where you can get your message across and people can't react to it, until they've kind of read it. So it was a very, very therapeutic experience for me.
I'm sorry to hear that about your mum.
Yeah.
Was there anything specific that she sort of realized as a result of reading your book?
She just apologized. She said she had absolutely no idea what I was going through. My mom went through a lot of things that no woman should go through in a marriage, and a lot of women suffer abuse. So I say this a couple of times in the book, that people are doing the best that they can with the tools that they have. And at the time, parents often behave in a certain way because they are responding to the world in the way that they're responding to the world. So my mom felt very sorry that she hadn't helped me more, that she didn't understand the condition. She wasn't aware of what I was going through. When I was hospitalized, she, as a lot of people did, they just thought, with depression or whatever, just snap out of it, go for a walk on the beach, understand how lucky you are, be grateful. So these were words my mum used, and a lot of people used in my life. And it was very, when you're in a situation where you're in a depressive state or whatever, those are the last things you want to hear. So my mum felt really sorry for having treated me the way that she had in the past. And she also got to a stage in her life where she was more understanding and more peaceful with her life. So she was more open to hearing my story.
Well, that's a really good thing to come from the book in and of itself, isn't it? So, well done
Absolutely.
for doing that. Um, One thing I wanted to talk to you about was you mentioned the fact that you've got kids yourself now,
Yes.
and perhaps your mum had a difficult experience, but then you've been brought up by her, but now you're bringing up children as well. So, and the question is around your approach to perhaps raising kids when you're struggling yourself, and the attempt at not passing that on, if you see what I mean.
Absolutely. And again, that's a very pertinent point, because I got divorced when my children were young. It was a very impulsive thing to do. It was just in the moment, and at the time, I had no idea that I had borderline personality disorder, and my children took the brunt of a lot of my struggles. Um, I had a couple of suicide attempts, and the effects of those attempts were so massive on my children that there's no way that they have come out of this unscathed. But they can see the growth, the change, the new person that I am, and we're able to have the conversations that we need to have, which has been difficult in the past because I was trying to survive. So they have, unfortunately, children are impacted by parents' behaviors and mental illnesses. But I'm fortunate enough to get to a stage where I can have the conversations that I need to. My children suffer, they suffer with their own struggles, and I take responsibility for some of that. Obviously, they're two people in a relationship as far as parenting is concerned. But it's been a very my years, the last few years, have certainly healed a lot of wounds, but it has impacted their lives.
And in terms of how you go about healing that, is that just, open conversation, or is there anything that you've done strategically?
Well, I try and get them to practice the mindfulness process. And for children or people that don't understand it, it's quite difficult unless you've dived into it. But mindfulness itself isn't difficult. Just understanding how the synchronicity of the process works. And yes, so there's firstly that, it's a conversation of, let's look at what's going on here and why, and understand that you're entitled to feel that way, but let's look at how we can behave better to each other. And let's look at how, if you had to play the movie forward, how this would roll out and what the outcome would be. So it is a very direct, hands-on, honest, vulnerable, experience that one needs to have in conversations, which we do now. And they're more equipped. They're more equipped even to go out into the world and have conversations as well. So I'm very grateful for the fact that I have found this healing and this recovery process, because it's definitely benefited them.
Well done. Any training you
Thank
do, or perhaps learning, they're going to benefit from as well. So that's another good thing.
Absolutely.
You
Yeah.
referenced in a previous answer about other diagnoses that you've had. I think you said bipolar disorder, anxiety, and depression. And I was wondering if you've given any thought to whether or not that was, are they, in your view, accurate diagnoses, or was it the fact that they just didn't see that it was BPD, and what your thoughts are around that?
I think that I suffered from clinical depression, so that's definitely one thing that I was hospitalized for. And then years later, because of my erratic emotional behavior, I was diagnosed with bipolar 1. And that is, so that is, I think, was accurate at the time. Borderline personality is difficult to detect, especially in younger people. They say that the brain hasn't formed like until your mid-20s. Also, in a lot of instances, men are reluctant to go seek help. So 75% of the cases that are diagnosed are women. But there was no understanding really. And also another point is that until not long ago, that people believed that borderline personality actually untreatable. They believed that people with it, there was no cure, or there was no help. So it was easier for a person, a psychologist or a psychiatrist, to diagnose with with bipolar, because they could medicate accordingly. So there was depression, anxiety obviously led, to depression and to unstable kind of lifestyle. The bipolar was for medicinal purposes, which I'm still on, and I talk about that in my book too, which is something I admit openly to. So the conditions were treated according to obviously what I was presenting, but also from a medication perspective in order to control my behavior. So, and then there was the other things called, ADHD. I was told that I couldn't focus, I couldn't concentrate. So these are all symptoms I call, or conditions of sensitivity. All of them, which I mentioned, have a way of making your behavior unstable. And a lot of people get those diagnoses. A lot of them get told that they have these things and they could have an underlying emotional condition.
And for if someone came to you and said, I think I'm struggling with depression, or they have a diagnosis, and you had the ability to give them some advice, what would you tell them?
Again, I would suggest that they lean into facilities and to people that could help. The best thing to do is to be educated, in my opinion, as well. So, understanding the thing about recovery is empowerment. It's understanding that you have the ability to benefit your life. And one of those things is reading. A lot of people are not, that don't have access to support and the finances, to do that. So with struggling with depression, I think that the best thing is to educate oneself, to also understand that your feelings are validated, and the way that you feel is the way that you feel. And that's okay. It's just one does need to be able to help themselves through those moments. So reading about things, reading about depression, understanding it, knowing that you're not alone, reaching out to people or organizations, which I mentioned earlier. A lot of people with depression have secondary issues such as, drugs or alcohol or past traumas. There are 12-step programs for those that are highly, highly beneficial. And all that is expected is for you to want to get better. Those are free organizations and support systems that are there to help people. So it really is, firstly, understanding that how you're feeling is a real thing, and that you shouldn't be feeling guilty about feeling the way that you do. Empowering yourself through education and knowledge, finding support groups that can help you through those tough times. And even if it is calling an organization like Lifeline, and then I know that they're throughout the world, there are other ones. And then, the other thing that's important, which I mentioned in your book, is we have the amazing ability to reformat our brains. We have neural pathways in our brains that can be changed over time, which is incredible. It's called neuroplasticity. And what that means is that you have the ability to be able to say, I'm not going to go down this path today. I'm going to just go down another one. And if you can change a habit long enough, then things will start taking place in your life that are beneficial. So that's a whole nother discussion, but it's the knowing that we have the power to be able to change the way that we are behaving is an incredible thing. And we're fortunate enough to be able to do that. So to get out of a situation where, you think that the world is happening or showing up in a badly to you, it's understanding that the world is the world, and it's how you're showing up that can be changed, which is an extremely powerful thing to process.
I love the answer. And my interpretation is that you're essentially covering all your bases. So you're doing all the right things in order to make it probable that you're going to improve your life. My next question is just around whether or not you take any pride in essentially overcoming all the adversity that you went through, because you've got your book, you've got all your learning, and you're doing good things, but you've come from a tough place. So whether or not you take any pride in that.
I do. I do. I think that it was a very courageous and brave thing to do. One of the processes I do with when I'm coaching is a value system to work out what your values are. I call it living out loud. So there's a process where you identify your top 3 values. The first thing that I value is myself now. I value the fact that I have this life and that I can make a difference to other people. The second value that I have is kindness. I try and show up in being kind to people, validating them, humanizing everybody that I meet, understanding that nobody's perfect, and that I try and do acts of kindness. But the third one for me is courage. And I think that doing something that is uncomfortable, like publishing a book about your life, and doing that sort of thing is incredibly courageous. And I acknowledge that. I acknowledge that I have been courageous in this journey. And I'm a bit bashful now, but I'm very happy that I did the book.
Well, congratulations. I think it's great.
Thank you.
What's next?
Yeah, it's interesting. When I did my launch, somebody stood up and said, well done, and it's great, but you've only got one life. So what are you going to write about the next time? And, I think that I would like to explore people's courage and look at other people's stories, perhaps, and how they've overcome diversity and hardship. So I'm sure that through the work that I do, I'll be able to get some information on people that have been through some hard things and survived and get some survival stories. So perhaps that's what's next. But for right now, I'm settling in. I'm loving it here. I've got myself a puppy, and I'm really kind of getting stuck into being outdoors and just loving my this chapter. So to be honest with you, I don't know. It's going to be an exciting journey, but I'm not sure what the next thing is going to be exactly,
Not
which is
sure, but it'll
exciting
be
in
great.
itself. Yeah, which is I'm just feeling really positive. I'm feeling like I'm on the right track, and it's been a long time coming. So I think that right now it's a great feeling that I'm kind of comfortable in my skin. I'm comfortable talking about things that aren't comfortable, and I'm in a country that's very safe and accommodating to those kind of conversations.
So who should buy the book and where do they go to get it?
I think that anybody that has suffered or is suffering from mental illness may find it beneficial to read, because it is just a simple story about life and how certain things can affect your everyday living, and it's just life. So I think anybody that is suffering from mental illness, specifically borderline personality, bipolar, ADHD, and depression, would benefit from it. The book is available on Amazon and Kindle anywhere in the world, obviously. And it was a oversight of mine to not have a picture of it here, but it is called Hiding in the Open, Living Sensitively. And I think that's exactly what it is. I think people would benefit who feel as if they can't be who they want to be, because of their past, or because of experiences they've had, or because of feelings that they're going through currently. So I'm hoping that they would find some comfort and possibly find things that resonate with them.
Sounds great, and I'm sure the book will be highly beneficial to anyone in that particular, should we say, scenario. Um,
Sure.
are there any closing thoughts that you'd like to offer today?
I would, thank you. I would like to tell people that there is a possibility of a great life or a better life. And one needs to take that responsibility and run with it, so to speak. But as to quote my counselor, that if you do the work, you will get to a point where you are living a life worth living. And I think it's important for people to know there's a lot going on at the moment. And I have a lot of people reaching out and speaking to me because it's not just their battles they're fighting. There's other circumstances in the world that they're fighting. But, one needs to focus on themselves and look at how they can be strong in order to be stronger in their environments and in in their world. So bottom line is there are ways to heal, and it is possible. And on the other side, it's beautiful, and it can be really beneficial.
Well, thank you for that. I think it's a great message, and congratulations on the book. And thank you for being
Thank
a
you.
great podcast guest today.
Thank you very much for having me, and I hope that I can help others. So thank you for inviting me.